Hey everybody, it's Ryan with Propelio. Today's show, we're going to be talking about all things private money. Our guest today is Alan Cowgill, all the way from Ohio, and we're going to be talking about private money, how to source it, what is private money, defining all those parameters. Then we're going to get into the paperwork behind it, and then we're going to get into the legal jargon. So stick around, take notes, ask questions. This is going to be a great show. Look forward to sharing. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. This, standing to my right, well, sitting actually, is Mr. Alan Cowgill. Yep. Welcome. Thank you for being here, sir.
Oh, I'm excited about it. Yeah, this is going to be a good time.
Yeah, so before we get into defining private money, and because I think everybody kind of has different opinions of what private money is.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about who you are and why you're the authority and why anybody should pay attention and watch this show at all.
Okay, well, I started out in actually corporate America. I got a quarter century in corporate America, and along the way, I realized I had the ladder against the wrong wall. I had seen that some of my family members retired at poverty level after working at JOB all their life, and I realized that if I didn't change my ways, I was going to end up the same way. But I didn't know what to do, and I would have liked to do something else, but I just didn't know where to go find that something else. Okay. So what happened was I was struggling at the time, even though I was successful in corporate America, struggling paying my bills, and I had this old beat-up car to let you know what I was living through, and the car needed some repair work, but I was too busy paying my other bills, and so what happened was on a very first date, when I took this lady home and started to walk her up to the door at her apartment, my car burst into flames. And so, sometimes when I speak out in crowds, somebody in the back of the room will yell "hot date," It's more like first and last date. You know how embarrassing it was standing there holding her hand, watching the fireman put my car out every morning when she woke up. The remembrance that date was a burnt charred mark in a parking lot. So
yeah, if that's I can see why there's probably not a second date, because if there was ever an omen to not go out with somebody ever again, it's the burning car in your front yard.
Never saw her again. But I started to look around harder on what to do. I looked into franchises, but they take money. I didn't have that.
Right.
I did decide to invest, so I took my whole federal tax return that year and plunked it down on lottery tickets. Lost on every ticket. Now you think I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed,
I was going
right?
to say, I was like, and then?
Lost on every one. Well, I was frustrated, couldn't sleep one night. 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up and started to channel surf, and I hit one of these real estate infomercials, and it got my attention. I watched the show, and I thought, this is something that I could do. The problem of it is I spent my money that day on lottery tickets, but they'd take a credit card, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, I picked up the phone, I ordered that home study system, and became enthralled with real estate. And that year, I bought my first 2 investment properties. Next year, 5. The next year, 18. Since that point in time, I've done hundreds of deals. And half the deals I do are without monthly payments, which is a real plus. If you and I get a chance, we'll talk about that. So that got me launched in the business, and roll the clock forward. The company I was working with, they had a layoff, and they were looking for volunteers, and they promised a sweetened offer if they did that. And I wanted to be a full-time real estate investor. I'd been honing my skills behind the scenes, and I was the first person in HR that quit, okay, and took the package. And when I stepped out into being a full-time real estate investor, the thing that happened was my timing was off. There was a downturn in the rental market. I had to evict some folks. I ran into a negative $10,000 a month cash flow problem. And banks wouldn't touch me. I'd been going down to the bank all along. I had a couple private lenders along the way, and we'll talk about that. And what happened was I had to do something to take care of that. And I had these 2 private lenders that had loaned me money. And I realized that was the answer to my problem. And I had to solve the problem quick because I had this negative cash flow.
But before we go on, and I warned you before we started that I tend to go on tangents, and you brought up 2 things that may not be relevant to this conversation, but they're relevant to entrepreneurs everywhere in real estate investing. One was the timing aspect of it. In all things entrepreneurism, real estate, life in general, timing is so important. We talk about here at Propelio about certain things we've done that we miss the timing. So for me, like when you miss timing, you could be right about it, but if you're wrong on timing, it's just a matter of how you move forward. And the other thing that you had said that was huge to me was the fact that even though you were doing multiple deals, you still had a job. You still had your position. Because I know there's a tendency in the entrepreneur real estate community to, I don't want to say put down or demonize or look down upon people that still have jobs, but if you're not ready to do full-time real estate, that's okay. I think too often people play this comparison game of, oh, well, Steve's over there doing this full-time, I need to be doing it. Well, maybe, but maybe not. If you're making a ton of money on the side, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay to still have a job and have that nest egg and work your ass off. And then eventually be a full-time. So I'm glad you pointed that out, but I also like the fact that you're like, I'm out.
When the timing was right.
Yeah,
that was
again,
it.
back to the timing. Yeah.
Yep. So it was great, and like I said, I had these two investors. I'll tell you about their lenders, and I'll tell you about those. In fact, I'm going to do something I don't think I've ever done before. I'll give you a litany of the lenders that I've had over the years, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Start out with my mom. I'm coming up through my real estate education. I hear this thing about hard money lenders and private lenders, and I thought they were the same. I thought those are interchangeable terms. But after a while, I realized that hard money lenders set the rules, like a bank or people give you, bank or lending institutes give you lines of credit. But with a private lender, I got to set the rules, and that shocked me.
You know what, Travion, that's a gold nugget right there. If you've got one queued up, because I've never heard that. Because for me, the way I would describe, and again, I'm not an expert or anything, but the way I've always described the difference between hard money lending and private money is because typically the terms are similar, at least rates, interest rates, but the only difference is typically a bunch of hoops and ladders that you have to go through for the hard money lender.
You're exactly right.
But the way that you just said that with a hard money lender, they set the terms and the arrangement, and with private money, you typically do. I love that, and if that's the only takeaway I get, that's worth it.
That's worth it. In fact, that's what makes getting private money lenders so important to us, because we get to be the loan approval committee.
Yeah,
we get to decide how to structure it. What interest rate and how long the loan's going to be out there, and it's incredible. Incredible.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Greg Kemp, but he has a show on Propelio with Grant Teach Something, and something that he said repeatedly is when you're trying to get private money lenders is use the phrase of how are you trying to place your capital? Let me place your capital, have your capital work for you. So if you can marry that concept of placing capital with, hey, I'm setting the terms, those two concepts together is at least in my head at this moment in time, very impactful.
It's huge. And I went back to Mom and I said, look, you're getting this poultry low rate of return on a bank CD. I'll pay you 3, 4, 5 times what you're getting on a bank CD. I'll give you a mortgage, a promissory note, hazard insurance, lender title insurance. So if something happens, you got a lien against the property, and I'll pay you monthly, simple interest only. And Mom jumped for joy, and she became my very first lender out there. So
would you recommend family as your first choices, or maybe wait a minute?
Well,
until you know what you're doing.
I encourage my students to start with people that they know. Okay, I have a live event, and we raised money in the first 24 hours of the event. We raised over $500 million over the lifetime of my event, and it's all working with people that you know. Okay, some people though are in the NFL club, no friends left, and so they have to do they have to do something else. And so what happens then is there is steps that you can take. You and I'll talk about that later. Okay, about those. But yeah.
So real quick, the NFL club, no friends left. Like they don't have any friends anymore, or they've tapped out their friends for money.
Could be both.
So real quick, if you're watching, if you're in the NFL club, drop a like, drop a wave, and maybe you need more friends, and I'll be your friend.
But we got a ways to handle that. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So Mom was my first lender, and she was tickled, and it made a big difference in her life, because if you look at CD rates, in fact, right now today, if you go to USA Today and you go to the green tab in USA Today, the money tab, on the front page there of that tab, bottom left-hand corner will be average U.S. CD rates. And I like going down to the 1 year and see what the average is. And it's 0081, which means
Percent.
percent. So if you've got $100,000 on a CD, at the end of the year, you get $810. I mean, it's pathetic. But with us, we can pay 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%. And it makes a dramatic difference in people's lives.
And that's for the CD. That's assuming you're getting that $800, assuming it sits there for a year.
Right.
Where like pretty much any transactional funding, you're probably getting at least $1,000 for use of your money for 30 minutes or something.
Right. Right. Yep.
That's
exactly
crazy.
Right. Yeah, it is. Well, I went along, got a second lender, and his name was Ed, and I sat out at his kitchen table. And he asked me a bunch of questions, and I was new at this business, and I'm a little embarrassed to tell you, I couldn't answer all of his questions, but he had enough confidence in me and faith in me that he was my second lender. And you would think at that juncture I would go out and get more lenders. Well, what happened was I was still working at JOB, like many folks listening, and I kept going to the corner bank to get my money because I'd been doing it. It was easy and all that. And I was tickled that I had 2 lenders, but I didn't go after more. And then I had that layoff happen, and I volunteered. And then I ran into that negative $10,000 cash flow problem, and I had to do something. And so what I did was I could go around and ask people one-on-one, like I did with Mom and Ed, which is my favorite way. But I decided to have a group meeting, a meeting for many. And so I put together a slide presentation. And I had this meeting, had 18 folks show up. I didn't know if I was going to be alone or if there'd be 50 folks. 18 showed up, and worked so well. I got lenders out of it. I did it again the next month, had 12, and did it all over again. A couple months later, I had $1 million to go buy property out
Now,
of it.
was this like a pitch deck to raise capital, or
Yes.
were you doing like some kind of educational thing, or was it just a straight, hey, this is what I'm doing, I would love for you to be a part of it?
Hey, this is what I'm doing. Join
You know,
me.
because that's one thing, because I know a lot of people in this business are asking for money or are told they need to have access to money, but I don't think anybody, well, I'm sure they do, but from my personal experience, holding a small little gathering, hey, I'll buy you dinner if you let me pitch you,
That's
or something
what I
like
did.
that.
I bribed them with a lunch.
Yeah, you know,
Exactly.
but having multiple people at once versus doing the one-offs. Because I could see hitting 10, 20 people and getting rejected 10, 20 times, that weighs on you. But if you just do a small gathering, a small lunch or dinner, pitch everybody, and you get 1 or 2 people, that's not that big a deal.
There's only 2 reasons to have a luncheon. One is that you leverage your time, and you talk first, eat second. You don't want to get that backwards, because the second thing is that they go to the back of the room, let's say, and they're having lunch, and they're looking for peer confirmation of what they just heard. They're looking to carry on a conversation. And what will happen every single time is they'll get confirmation from somebody else sitting at the table that this is a good thing, and your conversion rate will go through the roof.
And I wonder if there's a bit of reciprocity there as well, in the sense that I just bought you dinner, at least pay attention to what I have to say.
Could be.
Or
I don't know.
or whatever that goes.
Yeah, you could be onto something there,
So,
but I just know it works.
Before we go too much in the tangent, because I'm really enjoying where we're going so far, I do want to really define private money, attracting lenders, getting the loan money, et cetera. And I know we've defined private money already by setting the biggest difference between hard money and private money is the fact that hard money, they set the terms, private money, you set the terms. What are some other ways to say, to define private money?
Well, it's an individual that wants to get a high rate of return, okay? It's not somebody that's charging points and loan fees. It's, I don't want to work with somebody that wants to check out the property and try to vet me ahead of time. I learned early on, that's not where their head really should be. It ought to be over here on the high rate of return and how I secure the money. One of the things that happens is when a lender wants to loan you money, they might want to hand you a check, and that's not the way we want to do it, because you tell them that the money is secured by real estate, and therefore you have to handle it just like a bank would, where it goes into a formal closing, and you close, and they get a mortgage, a promissory note, hazard insurance, lender, title insurance. Okay, I get the deed. And a lot of my folks that I teach out there, they get a little bit confused on that. But we get the deed, and what will happen then is when I walk out at closing, I have a key in a deed, but I also have a fistful of cash, which is something different that doesn't happen with hard money lenders and banks. Because when I call up a private lender and ask them to send in the money, there's 4 parts of a closing. One is you need money for the purchase. Number 2 is the closing cost. Number 3 is money to improve the property rehab. And then I also borrow a little bit extra, okay, in case I run into a problem. If I don't run into a problem, it's just early profit. So when I walk out of closing, I got a fistful of cash, and I can start my rehab that day in the demolition work and get going on the deal. Okay?
And typically, the only way that's going to happen with hard money lending is if you're doing something like, if you're fudging numbers and doing something unethical. Yeah. But for private money, if that's just part of the terms, that's part of the deal.
It's part of the deal. Now, the other part of that, the other shoe is that you leave a bigger chunk of money for the back end. You don't want to turn this into an alligator. So you take a little bit out front in case you need it. You know, if I buy a property and then I need to put a gas line in or something like that, I got the money to do it. I don't have to dig into my pocket or borrow it from somebody else. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's a beautiful thing. I mean, you know, so many times what we worry about is cash flow. And if you've got that extra amount of cushion in there, it solves that problem if things get stretched out or if you're running different problems, okay? So it's just a major plus.
So going back, and forgive me if this is all over the place, but because you brought up cash flow, back to your story, you were hit in the face with, I have a negative 10,000 cash flow, and that's when you learned the beauty of private money. Did you just use them as an escape hatch, or did you get them to refinance things, or how did you make it to where that $10,000 anchor is not a problem anymore?
Well, I used the money to buy property. I refinanced some at that time and could pull some money back out on it, and so it just helped my business take off. And in time, there wasn't a negative cash flow.
Right, because I know working with banks. Ultimately, banks just want money, and if there's a problem over here, they'll try to fix it anyway, even if it is sabotage the relationship with you over here. Because I know people from the 08, 09 era where they had multiple flips going, and they paid their bills, but because somebody in Florida didn't pay their bills, all of a sudden their notes are being called.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah. So, that's a hazard out there. The thing about the banks. First off, you got to jump through a bunch of hoops to get the money, okay? And the other thing is they like monthly payments. Well, one of the ways that I set it up is the lender gets paid when I get paid, which is when I sell the property, so no monthly payments on those.
Because going back to the original concept is you're setting the terms.
I set the terms. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so, some people out there that are doing retail, they don't want to pay monthly because they want to get everything handled at the end, when they sell the place. In other cases where you got rentals like I do, that monthly payment is good. In some cases, I pay simple interest only, and I pay on the 15th of the month because maybe it's not down here in Texas, but in Ohio, tenants pay late. So what happens is they pay on the 1st. They're trained to pay on the 1st, right? And so I pay my lenders on the 15th, which gives me a little grace period, which is another plus out there. And you can also amortize a loan. So that's the 3 ways I pay.
And that's a good little mini nugget there is just if setting your terms to pay is, hey, give yourself some buffer.
That's right. You got total control on how you set up the loan.
So as far as private money goes, because I know we're talking about real estate, but I have a feeling that these methods could probably be applied to pretty much anything.
That's a great point. I spoke out in California this year, and I had 3 movie producers in the audience, and sometimes I'll have them come to my live event too. You can use this money for notes. You could use it to fund a boutique. Actually, some of the students want to fund their own home with it, personal residence, because they want to have some relief on that. And there's just so many avenues for this. I speak at seminars for notes. I spoke to 450 mortgage brokers, and also they could get private lenders and make their 5 points and on the deal. As real estate investors, we can make more than that, but that's where their focus was at. So yeah, and I speak for notes, people that do that, and there's a lot of use for money. But what I like about in fact, I should tell you, I know somebody right now that is using private money to have a concert. Imagine that.
I would love to hear that whole.
Yeah, so they're working on it. And so, but the thing I like about having the business that I'm in with real estate is because you can secure the money with the property.
Right.
Okay, and these other ones, you could lose.
Well, like a concert, like, okay, what if it rains out? What if there's a storm?
Yeah.
What if nobody shows up?
Yeah.
Okay, fine, you refund the tickets. But I've done enough events to know that there's always a cost.
Yep.
Even if there's not, if you cancel this, what about all the time you spent on it already? There's a cost there.
So there's a lot of use for private money. Now my focus is real estate, but there's a lot of other areas.
Well, I don't know, and we'll get into it, the paperwork and the legal side of things, but like, I would be very hesitant to want to lend out on a concert,
right?
On anything that's not tangibly secured by real estate.
Yep, me too.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Now, as far as getting money and getting lenders, you're talking about the NFL club. What are some advice because hopefully people have commented below that they're in the NFL club or they need it or they need some friends.
I'm sure.
What is some quick tips of finding? Is it going to an IRA? Because I know Quest Trust here locally here in Texas, they have lunch and learns. They have events all the time specifically to try to marry people together. Hey, I've got money, I've got deals. Okay, let's try to figure something out. What are some additional ways people could find money?
There's three things I brought to this market, and I'll share one of those since you asked right now, is that my attorney, I'm not an attorney, I don't give legal advice, but my attorney did a lot of research on this, on what is the difference between somebody that you know, and I call it family, friends, and associate, versus a stranger. And with his research, he found out that if you know somebody 30 days and you've had 3 contacts with them, on the 31st day and the 4th contact, you can ask them for money, just like they're an associate.
So that means that. How do you define friendship?
Yeah,
4 touches in 31 days.
You got it. You got it. And so I got students doing that and learning how to get. And the other way to do it is to fill out the paperwork and maybe pay a small fee and have the right to go advertise. You can advertise. You just have to fill out some paperwork and at times pay a fee, and then you can advertise. And some are controlled by the state, and some are controlled by the federal government. And we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. So on that, is there any other? Because we're about to take a break. Is there any other ways to look at real estate, or not real estate, but private money? And I do have an analogy that I've been thinking about since we've been sitting here, and you can say that's accurate, or Ryan, you're an idiot. But it's almost like you're backing the horse, not necessarily the race that the horse is in.
Backing the horse.
You see what I'm saying?
Not yet.
Okay, so like if I'm as seeking private money,
right,
I'm the horse.
Okay.
You're not backing the race. The race would be like the flip itself.
Right. Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You see that analogy, people?
Yeah,
you like that? Thumbs up, don't thumbs down. Just say you like it. Or does that make sense though?
Yeah. Yeah.
You like that? You're going to use it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think he's going to use it.
But yeah, so the what you do is you see, there is 3 steps of a normal business startup when it's starting. Take a doctor for an example. The first step is to get an education. That's what a doctor does. The second step for a doctor is to line up the funding so they can get their office and their desk and their computer and their equipment. The third step is they hang the shingle and they open up for business. Real estate investors can't get those 3 steps in order if they're letting somebody else control their funding, like a bank, hard money lender, or line of credit, okay? Because they're controlling things. But with private money, I look at it as like ordering a pizza. I mean, it's that simple. You pick up the phone, like you order a pizza, you can pick up the phone and you can order up money from a private lender. Those 3 steps, real estate investors get them out of order because they start out with getting an education, and then they're told to do what? They're told to go make offers. That's step 3. And then they go look for money, and they wonder why this business is so hard for them. So it's important that they get that second step of the funding in order. And the only way you can do that in this business is through private money.
I think also when you are making offers, there's the level of confidence, going back to getting money, you need to have confidence, is if I'm making an offer and I know without a shadow of doubt that either I know I can assign that through wholesale, or I know I can close on it because I've got money in the bank or I've got access to private money, there's a level of confidence there that somebody that doesn't really know what they're going to do when they have that contract, am I going to be able to assign it? Am I going to be able to get a loan, hard money lender, or private money? And it might be a subtle thing, but just having that access to money could quite possibly give you the edge when negotiating for the contract.
You're exactly right. The number one thing that I get back from my students is that what I teach gives them the confidence. It comes back over and over again in their testimonials and emails that what I teach gives people the confidence to go out and make offers. Mm-hmm. Because they got the money lined up and they know they can take the offer down.
Start calling you Dr. Cowgill, you know, for the confidence boosting.
Yeah.
So we're at our first break. I'm really enjoying this conversation. If you're liking what you're hearing, please comment below. Please share it out. We're going to go into break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the paperwork that goes into the private money side. So stick around. We'll be right back. This is Steve. Steve is a successful real estate investor. Steve is wearing glasses, so therefore you know he's a successful real estate investor. You go, Steve. Go, Steve, go. Go get those dollars. You see that blue dot? That's Steve. Just looking at houses left and right. Look at him go. Get the Propelio mobile app and drive for dollars today. All without leaving your car. So we're back. I'm Ryan Propelio. Today we're talking about private money with Mr. Alan Cowgill out of Ohio. So the first segment we were talking about private money. We talked about you and probably a dozen tangents from me, but if you watch me, that's you know what you're in for. So now we're going to be talking about the paperwork. What does that mean? Because I understand. Going back before where you're doing these little seminars, or not seminars, you're doing these pitch deck meetings and people are like, well, hey, I'm back and here's a check.
Right.
That's a no-no.
Right, that's a no-no.
So let's what's the yes, no, yes? Anyway, yeah. What's the paperwork?
Well, what happens is and I call this the mechanics, because before that we're talking about will you loan me money and handling all that. And then what happens is they say yes. Then they say, yeah, I want to loan you some money. That's where this paperwork kicks in. What happens is I want to up the ante on whatever they tell me. If they say I'll loan you $100,000, then I would come back immediately and say, if I find a deal worth $200,000, should I call you? Very kind and courteous. And a lot of times they'll say yes. So you just doubled your money like that. I don't care what they say. If they say I want to loan you $1 million, I would come back and say, if I find a deal worth $2 million.
Now, what's the psychology? Is that just because they're never going to give you full access until you ask?
Exactly. What they do is they test you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lender, her name's Blanche, and she started me out at $25,000, and she got me up after multiple steps up to $230,000. The other thing too is I had a student use my up the ante technique, and she talked to a lady, and the lady said, yeah, I'll loan you $100,000. So my student used my technique, said, if I find a deal worth $200,000, should I call you? The lady said yes. And so my student used it again. I would have never thought of that. And what happened was, in 30 seconds, she got her up to $900,000 from $100,000.
I'm going to use that on dates. Like, hey, if, you want to go on a date? Yes. So if the date's good, do you want to go on a second date? Yeah. Okay, well, let's get 4. I don't know.
Just up
probably a stupid
up the ante.
Trey, just cut that.
You have to work on that one.
Yeah.
but that's where I start. Now there is one piece of paper before that I want to talk to you about. If you're doing a luncheon or one-on-one, and they haven't committed, there's a piece of paper, I call it my interest form, whether they're interested or not. Mm-hmm. And it's very simple. It gives, writes down what their name is, and if they have any IRA money or what, and then the check boxes for different amounts of money. and if they want to have a meeting or if they're not interested, whatever. But on that interest form, it's really neat because it is a trigger mechanism to where they will commit. And then once I get that, and let's say they said, okay, $250,000, they check that box, I'll come back and say, well, if I find a deal worth $500,000, will I call you? So, so that little form there is still in the asking for money stage, okay?
But does that also help apply to the SEC? I'm not a lawyer, so this might not be the right, but the SEC rules of having 4 touches in a 31, because now you have a documented proof that there's an interest there?
It depends on where you're at in what stage. You know, if you got family, friends, associates, you can do it right away, all right? If you're on the 3-touch rule that you're talking about, which is a stranger, and you're in that process, then you would only use that after the 31st day and the
Okay, so that little interest form is after they're eligible.
Right, after they're eligible. Exactly right. And so so we go into the up the ante, and then what would happen, to answer your question about the paperwork, is let's say they said, yeah, I'm in for $500,000. Then I would shake your hand and I'd say, you made a wise decision. Now, don't you think people would like to hear that? I made a wise decision. You made a wise decision. And here's how it works. You don't make the check out to me. I'll give you a call in the next 4 to 6 weeks, and I need to have you be ready for me. I'll have you send the money in to Elder Robertson Elder down on Limestone, and then we'll close. Does that work for you? They always say yes. Now, the other piece of this is that you just committed that in the next 4 to 6 weeks you're going to get their money working. If you get out here in week 3 and you don't have anything, you don't see anything coming through the pipeline, then you owe it to that lender to go back and tell them that that I haven't found anything that's good for you or I. Kind of bring it both together, you or I. I just need to let you know I need another 4 weeks here, and I just wanted to let you know, is that okay with you? They'll say yes again. I do that because if you ignore them and here they think they're going to get their money out and you don't show back up, their brother-in-law or somebody might get it, you know. I mean, you don't know where that money's going to end up. They might not be there when you get back. And so you always have to know that you got to communicate. Now, when we go to closing, they get a mortgage, a promissory note, hazard insurance, and lender title insurance. And one of the things that everybody out there needs to know, they also get a disclosure statement. Now, you know, in my home study system, I provide that to my students as a fill in the blank. I still encourage them to go to an attorney and make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But mine's 9 pages, and what it does on the disclosure is it tells the people on how much money I'm looking for, what interest rate I'm paying, what I'm going to use the money for, how they get paid back, and then the back part of it is some legal gobbledygook that has maybe some stuff about your state rules or whatever. And
neither one of us are attorneys. So pay somebody a lot more money for the gobbledygook.
Well, yeah. If you could, you know, you can have the attorney do it from scratch,
right.
Or you could start out like I give them the fill in the blank to try to save some money, and then they would still go to an attorney. Okay, and then once you got it, then you got it. You know.
Well, just to step back 2 seconds, just because I think it's worthwhile to note and really put a stamp on it, is the fact that when you've identified somebody, you have that connection. Hey, you've made a wise decision. I'll give you a call the next 4 to 6 weeks, but you're setting them up with expectations. And you're instead of just saying what we'll do is we'll call a title company and we'll do it third party. You could do that, or you could say, hey, we're going to go to when we're ready. When I have a deal, you're going to send your money to Brittany Washington, Kane Title. That's a title company person, a friend of mine here locally. But you're giving them a concrete anchor of the process versus an abstract. A title company.
Yeah, you see, they don't understand your program. They don't know. They might just hand you a check. I've had people try to do that with me.
Right.
I say, well, no, we want to do this to where your money is secured with real estate. You see, they loan you money based on the fact that they trust you.
Because they're backing the horse, not the race.
They trust you, and so so what happens is then they don't know how this thing flows forward. You know, maybe they bought one personal residence, and that's the only experience they got at a bank. Now you come along, and they want to get a high rate of return. They don't want to get that 0081 on the bank CD anymore. Okay,
Right.
They want to start getting 7%.
Yeah, and it's important to point out right there that a high rate of return is relative, because 7% is super cheap, at least in Texas, for hard money, private money. But for somebody getting a return on the money, 7% is insane.
Yeah, yeah.
So just realize that everything is relative. So a high rate of return compared to a CDI is huge.
Yep. Now, something else here that I got to let everybody know is that you find a lender, and what they will do is they will go out and tell other people about what a great decision they made. And what will happen is you will have more people. Like one private lender can bring you two can bring you four. You can get so much money you can't spend it all. It happened to me. I got so much money I couldn't buy enough property. I had to hire a guy to buy property. He came on board mid-September one year. From mid-September to Christmas, he bought me 21 properties with my private money. And then from New Year's to August, he bought another 48. And that's how much money I had that he could get out. The other thing too is that when that one lender brings you two lenders, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to up the ante. Don't forget that. So whatever that second person, that's how you get so much money. You can't spend it all.
Right.
And those two people will bring you four, and you up the ante on every single one. And that's how I got so much. In fact, while I'm thinking about this, when I started out, my business had a trickle of money with my mom and Ed. And then what happens, I had these two luncheons, and I got a river of money. But what happened was when I tapped in, you're talking about paperwork, when I tapped in to people that had 401ks and they had quit, retired, or gotten laid off. You might want to write those down right now, folks. Quit, retired, or gotten laid off. They can take that 401k and they can roll it over into a self-directed IRA. And then when that's sitting in that self-directed IRA, if they need money to live off of, they can pull money out of that every month. But now they got a big stack of money they want to make work and get a high rate of return, and that's where we come in. And these are the people that don't need the monthly payments, okay? So a big, big plus. Mm-hmm. Now on the IRA, there's 4 documents that you need to know. And number 1 is to open up an account, okay? And we like to help the lender because some lenders, if we don't help them, they just won't get to cross a goal line. So we help them. We can't put down their signature or their account number or anything like that, but we know the document to use, okay, to get them lined up. The second thing is a rollover document, but if you check a box on the first document, then you can avoid the rollover. The first box document will tell that company, that IRA company, to roll the money over on its own, okay? And then the third box is the one we care about. The third form is direction of investment. That directs the money down to the closing table. And the fourth one is coupon. That's the one they care about. That gets them paid back. So if you know those 4 simple forms, and you don't even have to worry about the second one if you do the first one right, then it's very simple to move somebody's money from a 401k, and this is a pot of gold for us, over into a self-directed IRA. And I got one other thing while I'm thinking about it, if you don't mind, is that there's a lot of different IRA companies out there, and if you're in a RIA group, a Real Estate Investment Association, if you've got vendors there that provide that, that's the first place I would go. If you don't have those, there's some other ones out there. You mentioned one locally.
Quest Trust, yeah.
Quest, yeah, done business with them before. American IRA and Equity Trust seem to be all great.
Well, what I was going to ask is yes, you need to know those 4 forms, but if you have a good self-directed IRA specialist, can't you just lean on them for the knowledge?
Yeah, and they'll help you.
Because that's the beauty of real estate is time, money, knowledge is the more you can outsource, the better.
Yeah, all you have to do is pick up the phone. They'll walk you right through the form. Yeah,
exactly.
And then what you do is when you take that to the lender, they have to finish it out, sign it, and all that. And then I give them a self-addressed stamped envelope, or I give them that's already addressed to the IRA company, and they can send it in and open up the account.
Oh, so you're saying even if they don't even say you met Bob over here, and Bob's got a 401k and he's got $100,000 in there or whatever.
And they've quit, retired, or gotten laid off. So now he can move it.
Right. So hopefully he's got more than 100, but for easy math, he's got $100,000 over there, and he doesn't have a relationship with like a trust, you're like, don't worry, I got your back. I want to help you out.
Yep.
Here are these 4 forms. I call Haley Gant over at Quest or all the other people I love over there. But Haley's my go-to referral person. Give me these 4 forms. I got you a referral. Come over here, blah, blah, get all that, send it all over to Haley, and then now we're off the races on my next project.
You got it. You're exactly right.
I never even thought about that aspect of
it's huge
of finding the money and then converting them over to an SL.
Now on picking they call them third-party administrators or custodians. Picking these IRA companies that they have to be friendly to real estate investors. There's a lot of IRA companies, a lot of banks. People put their money in there for IRA. Well, that's on a bank certificate of deposit. We want somebody that's friendly to real estate. So you need to research who you want. We named a handful here, and then once you pick those, I would call them up and get their marketing material. They'll be happy to give it to you, so you can get a handful of their marketing stuff, and you can give it to the people that have 401ks that want to roll them over.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I did at my group meeting, and so it made it so. The other thing too is over all these years, I tell the lender that they can go pick whoever they want, and what happens is they always go with who I recommend because they trust us, and they don't know where to go.
Well, if they're giving you money, there's already established trust.
You got it.
But I think you hit the nail on the head of if an IRA company is at a RIA group, some sort of real estate event, they're more likely to be real estate centric and friendly.
Yeah. One of the things on being at a real estate event is if you're looking for money at a real estate event, if you find somebody with money, what'll happen is they're going to want to vet you and get everything they can on the property. But there's so many other people out there outside of that don't want to care about the property. I mean, other than the fact around Christmas time they'll throw the family in the car and their cousins and aunts and uncles and grandma and grandpas, and they'll drive by the property and say, I got money in that property, and things like that. But they want you to take care of. They want you to take care of all that. So very important.
Well, there's several ideas out there. Like I don't even know if trying to find money partners at a real estate investment event is the best use of your time. Because, I mean, you think about it, at a real estate event, everybody else is looking for money too.
Yeah.
So some of the ideas that I've heard around the campfire is go to a doctor's event. If there's an event in town for doctors, go hang out in the hotel bar.
Perfect. You're 100% right.
Kristen Gerst here locally, one of the things that she does is all these $500 plate galas that are throughout the year, she goes to all of them. And you could be like, oh, she just wants to get dressed up and yeah, but guess what? If it's a $500, $1,000 dinner, guess what? Those other people, they paid a lot of money to be there. So she picks up a lot of her private money people at events like that because it would be safe to assume if you're paying that much money for a plate, you probably have money.
You got money. So, hey, I got to caution everybody on something. What happens is when you go to your RIA group, somebody will stand up and say, I'm a private lender. They'll have a booth that says, I'm a private lender. And what happens is if you think back about what we talked a little bit ago, is that they're actually a hard money lender. They are setting the rules. Don't let the terminology mislead you. I see it happen in every place I speak, to where somebody will be there at the booth and there's a big sign that says private lender. And in reality, they're a hard money lender if they're setting the rules. We're looking for people that aren't setting the rules. We're looking for people that let you set the rules. And
you're looking for people that you can place their capital and you set the terms.
And get a high rate.
It goes back to one of the first things we said today, which is when I said, hey, if this is the only thing you take away, it's worth it, is private money is setting the terms, hard money is their setting the terms.
Exactly right. And you got to watch that because I see at the RIA groups that there's some misleading going on because they know, hard money lenders know that it's a lot easier if you call yourself a private lender. Mm-hmm. Okay? And if they set the rules, then that's a hard money lender.
Well,
nothing wrong with hard money lenders. It's just private lenders are a lot cheaper and a lot easier.
The whole point of, well, not the whole point, but in real estate, it's about making things as easy and hassle-free as possible. The whole reason a lot of people get into this business is the lifestyle that you can have.
Yep.
You know, so if you like working 40, 50, 60 hours a week and having the corporate job, keep that. But the whole point of getting in real estate, at least for me, is the lack of hassle. So for instance, I remember working several years ago with a hard money lender. They'd be our go-to people. Call somebody up. Yeah, hear the details. That you literally I mean, it's still a hard money lender. It's still their terms, but you could text them, you could call them, you could email them. But the minute that they got like a loan from a bigger bank, which completely made their business like 10x the size, then immediately they went from the ease of use of being able to just call up, you know, Steve to get your loan.
Yep.
Now it's like, okay, cool, great. Go to our online form and fill out the paperwork. And you're like, and I know that sounds absurd now, but
yeah,
you got to think when it goes, because that a lot of ways private money is you pick up a phone, yeah, cool, I'll do the deal once you have that established relationship. But you know, for a hard money lender, if they can't compete, if I have to go through a 20-page web document versus pick up a phone,
right,
to say, hey, can I borrow some money? The private money is going to win every day.
No question. Well, one of the things I want folks that are listening to think about this is that why don't you become the hard money lender? I was up in Minnesota here this year, and a guy had a booth there, and he come running out and shook my hand, gave me a hug, and he said, I want to thank you, you changed my life. He said, I now have $7 million of private money all because of you. And he was a hard money lender. And he got up in front of the crowd of 215 folks before I spoke. When I didn't know he was going to do it, he grabbed the mic and he told everybody about what I'd done. So, and how I helped him. And I didn't know until he told me at that moment.
You're like, where's my referral fees on all these deals?
But the point is that there's so much flexibility, like you and I talked about.
Yeah.
You can use it on notes. You can use it to become a hard money lender. You know, what I did was when I had so much money, I ramped up my buying machine and bought more property. So there's so much flexibility in this.
So going back to the paperwork, because I feel like I keep tanging away from paperwork because paperwork is boring. Where am I lacking? What have I failed to ask to really focus on paperwork?
Let's talk about the when you close when you sell the property. Mm-hmm. What'll happen to you many times is the lender will say, I want you to just keep the money and keep paying me that high rate of return. I call this keeping money in the gap. And you've done in writing on your disclosure statement, and you've told them verbally that the money is secured by real estate. So you can't keep the money in the gap. You can't keep the money where it's unsecured. What you do is if somebody says, I want you to just keep the money so I can get a high rate of return, then you got to do a couple things. One is you tell them that that's outside the scope of your program. Okay, that's what I tell them, that I have to give you the money back because I promise you the money is secured by real estate. And the second thing you do is you crank up your buying machine so you can get their money working again, okay? So very important that you know how to handle that paperwork at the end, okay? The other thing I want to tell you is that on this disclosure statement, if I was going to give you the disclosure statement today, what I would also do is I got a 5.5 by 8.5 piece of paper. So it's an 8.5 by 11 cut in half. And on that it said, today I got Alan's disclosure statement, and you sign and date it. And I take it back to the office and I put that in your folder. I have my private lenders in red hanging folders, and inside that I've got a manila envelope, black felt pen, top left-hand corner, where I'll have your name. And why do I put it up there? Because I have different people in the office, and they'll put it in the middle or someplace else. And if they put it in the top left-hand corner, I can go right through the files and see everybody's name. And then I'll take that little slip and I'll put it in there and roll the clock forward. If you didn't think 3 years later you forgot that you got it or whatever, and you say, well, I never got it. Well, here's a piece of paper. So it's a little CYA tool that I came up with. Yeah. There's no reason why you have to do it, but I thought it would be a good thing for me to do, and I did. Mm-hmm. And it's been a good comfort level that I've got that in.
Well, it goes back to most of the time. Yeah, a lot of these people may not be your friends per se, but you do have a strong, trusting working relationship Otherwise, they would never give you your money. But even then, CYA, get everything in writing.
You got
even if it is just the receipt of this document. I think that's very, very smart.
There's another thing on the paperwork that I do is I always get an after repaired value appraisal. So here I got this house that needs work. I am getting ready to buy it and getting ready to close on it. I will call up an appraiser. I don't want a highball appraiser. I don't want a lowball appraiser. I want a good, fair appraisal on this thing. I will give them a list of what I'm going to do to improve the property. And I don't know if this matters or not, but I put down what I think the property's worth. They might not ever look at that because that's their job. That's what they're going to tell me. But it gives me a comfort level that I told them. But I send that over to the appraiser. And what will happen is they will come back and give me an after repaired value appraisal. So I've got a stake in the ground the day I bought that property on what it was worth. And that way, if the bottom drops out like you talked about in 08 and things like that, then there isn't anything the lender can come back and complain about, because the day you bought it, you had verifiable price from a certified appraiser. Okay? So that's the way I handle it.
So just to wrap up the conversation, what are the documents? So 123 Main Street, I have a contract on it. What all do I need from my private money partner? Well, I don't know if you would call him a partner, but private money lender to secure that money.
Check, wire.
A wire to the bank.
Yeah, wire to the bank.
But then what about the deed of trust, all that stuff?
We take care of all that.
Okay.
The closing, the title company will take care of all that. Okay?
Right, but what are those documents? Just to
the mortgage,
list them out.
promissory note, hazard insurance, lender title insurance. We will put together the disclosure. Okay, the title company take care of all this stuff. All right, and so we close. Coming out of closing, everybody gets their signed documents and all that. They will get the original promissory note. Now, I like to keep all the originals, and I realized early on that the promissory note, that the lender ought to get the original. So they always get that. I get a copy, and I put that in the red hanging folder in the file. And so going through that, that's exactly the paperwork that you need. Okay?
And I'll throw in a tip here is double check that before it's sent off, because even though you may have the best title company rep ever, you're not the, as much as we like to assume we're the only client the title escrow officer has, they have a ton of other clients.
Just the opposite.
And sometimes it's missed. Sometimes it's mistaken. I know Daniel likes to just, with a lot of his private capital partners in the past, he will give to the title company a template of what he wants it to say, and then they just kind of fill in the dots.
That's a great point. One of the things that folks need to know on the IRA, there will be a certain way that they will want that named on the promissory note, on the check, on the mortgage. Okay, for an example, let's just use equity trust. I brought that up. With equity trust, what they want is equity trust custodian, FBO, Allen Cowgill IRA, and FBO stands for the benefit of. Okay, so equity trust custodian, FBO, Allen Cowgill IRA, and what happened to me was we could quit doing business in Ohio. We can close with attorneys. We could quit doing business with one attorney because their office kept messing it up, which means the money doesn't move. Okay, because equity trust and all these IRA companies, they will want to make sure you got things on the paperwork the way they want them. And so you need to be aware of that. Okay.
Yeah, but again, it goes back to just having a good self-directed IRA specialist that you can communicate with and make sure you have everything in order.
And that we give the instructions to the title company so that they, which is what you were talking about, give them that instruction so that they get the words in the right order. Right. And they don't drop a word or add a word or anything like that.
So one thing I do want to point out before we go to our next break is, one thing at Propelio we're always talking about is abundance and sharing knowledge. Like you came in and did the Academy videos.
Yeah, that was great.
And really looking forward to getting feedback for that from the community. But when it comes to deals, when it comes to hard money lenders, when it comes to contractors, when it comes to pretty much everything about real estate, it's share, abundance, until we start talking about private capital partners. And it seems like, hey, who's your partner? I got a guy. And I just want to point out the obvious reasoning behind that. It goes back to what you were saying before when we were talking about the whole, hey, thank you for doing business. You'll hear from me from 4 to 6 weeks. You'll send it off to 1 to 3 trust or a title company, and we'll move forward. Because if you don't place their capital, somebody else will place their capital.
Exactly.
And if they've only got $1 million to spend, and somebody else spends that money, then when you need it, you don't get access to it.
Right.
So, just to point out the obvious, that's why people are squirrely about sharing their.
Yeah, you don't want anybody tainting your lender. You want, you want your lender for you.
It's like, I'll give you a kidney, but I'm not giving you my lender. Yeah. So anyway. So if you like what you're seeing, please drop comments, please drop love. Go check out Alan's Propelio Academy videos on Propelio Academy. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into legal jargon, the legal aspects of private money, and we're still having a good time. So let us know in the comments if you're liking this. Otherwise, Travion, take us to a break.
This is Steve. Steve is a successful real estate investor. Steve is wearing glasses, so therefore you know he's a successful real estate investor. You go, Steve. Go, Steve, go. Go get those dollars. You see that blue dot? That's Steve. Just looking at houses left and right. Look at him go. Get the Propelio mobile app and drive for dollars today. All without leaving your car.
Welcome back, everybody. So, to put a bow on this whole conversation, I don't know why I'm yelling, but it is legal. It just gets me fired up. Before we get into the legal side of things, I'm not an attorney. You're not an attorney.
Not giving legal advice.
We need attorneys.
Yeah.
What does the legal side of private capital look like?
All right. Well, what happened to me was I hired an SEC attorney to research every state in the United States and Canada. And when he got done, he called me up and he said, hey, I want to thank you. And I said, why is that? He said, well, I just moved into my new house and you bought it. Now, you don't want to hear that from anybody. You paid them so much money, but it gives you the moral obligation, the dedication I had to you folks out there to make sure that we not only had the fundamentals, but we also had the rules. And it's just like a sporting event. I was an offensive and defensive guard in football, and the coach would teach me the fundamentals of the position, how to block and tackle. And what he also did was hand me a rule book. And in that rule book, it said if you're carrying the ball and you go 10 yards, you get a first down. You're carrying the ball and go across the goal line, you get a touchdown. It's no different with private money. You need to know the fundamentals, how to attract, convert, and manage private lenders. And then also, you need to know the rule book. And we're going to talk about that right now. One of the things I want to bring up for everybody is I'm going to give you a website, and write this down, that you can go to, and you can see for yourself what programs you can use. And the reason I created this website is because when I took my attorney to my live events, my students loved him, and they just loved everything he had to say. And one day I was at the end of an event, I was sitting in a lobby in Florida with my attorney, and students were talking to us, and they were asking him questions about exactly which program or programs they could use. And I saw that there was a vacuum, a gap in our industry for this. And I figured I was a guy that could solve it. And so what I did was I thought I would come up with some kind of tool that they could use. And I thought I'd have it done by the next boot camp. Well, it actually took me 2.5 years to have birth on that thing. But when I got done with it, it was really seems really simple, but it took a long time because all the metrics and all this kind of stuff. And you answer 3 questions, and it tells you which program or programs you can use. And those 3 questions are really simple. You're going to advertise, you're going to cross state lines, how much money you want. It's just basic. And what happens is when you go out and you fill out your email, it'll come back to your email account, and click on that because we want to know if you're a robot or not. And so when you click on that, what it'll do is it'll take you back, and you can answer these 3 questions, and it will tell you which program or programs that I'm going to describe right now that you can use. Okay, the website is www.alan, that's ALANSEC.com, and I want to start off with that because I don't want to forget it, if that's okay. So what happened is when my attorney was researching all the states out there, he found out that there was state regulations and federal regulations, okay? And so let's take and there are also two levels of the SEC, if you will, that my understanding might be a lot more, but there is the federal SEC, which handles things like when you cross state lines. There's also state specific where they control within the boundaries private money and things like that. So on the federal SEC, they will typically end in Reg D, okay? And so there is a 504 Reg D, and that one I'm really getting excited about. It started out where it had $1 million cap, but here not too long ago they changed that to where if you have a substantial disclosure, remember we talked about my 9-page disclosure? Well, if you beef that up, then you can go to $5 million and you can advertise to get the money and you cross state lines. And so in the 504 form is free, but in virtually all but one area I'm going to talk about, you should have an SEC attorney. And you never go to the SEC directly. You always get your own attorney and let them talk for you with the SEC, whether it be federal or state. So 504 I like. Also the other ones is private placement memorandums. These are the big dollar ones. If you want to go out and do storage units or hotels and things like that, or create an empire, you would use a PPM, private placement memorandum. And some of you older folks out there, you know it by syndication. There is 2 of those. One is a Rule B, where you cannot advertise, but you can have 35 non-accredited investors. I'll explain what an investor is here, accredited investor, or the rest accredited. Or a Rule C, and that's one my students like because now you can advertise, but there is no non-accredited there. What's accredited mean? It means that the SEC has determined that there is a level of investor that they kind of let us play easier together, I guess was the best way to say it, is these are people that are worth $1 million, not counting their personal residence, or they make $200,000 a year and they're expected to make it next year. And if they got a significant other and turn it in jointly, then it's $300,000. So this is the big hammer. You got unlimited dollars and on the accredited and virtually unlimited lenders. And some of my students get both. They'll get the B and the C, okay? So if you're looking to do big deals, that's a great way to go. Now, let me take you down to the state specific. The next one I'm going to talk about, you don't need an attorney on unless you're in one of 13 states. On this next one, it's my family, friends, and associate group. My attorney told me that the SEC, they call it someone that you've got a, let's see. I have to get back to it. I got to think about it for a second because I try to forget it. I like family, friends, associates, people that I know. But a prior relationship, that's what the SEC does. If you get prior, I thought, okay, what's that mean? Well, if you got, if you know somebody for 30 days and got 3 contacts with them on the 31st day or the 4th contact, you can ask them for money. But this is people that you know. You don't need an attorney for that, other than on the disclosure statement, I would have an attorney for that. And in 13 states out there, what happens is you've got to fill out a piece of paper and pay a small fee, and then you can do what the rest of the states can do. The other thing you need to know about this one is each state determines how much money you can raise. And so virtually across the whole U.S., it's $1 million cap. Indiana and Vermont, it's $500,000. Now you can go unlimited. I just told you that with the private placement memorandum. And they also control the number of lenders that you can have. Vermont, I believe it's 4, which is pathetic. And New York is 40. In my state, it's 10. But if you want to go above that, you can do that. There's ways to do that.
When you're talking about raising money in the limits of $1 million, are you talking about like raising for a fund or raising for a specific project?
Over a period of months.
Okay.
For an example, we've got a quirk in Ohio. All the other states are 12 months, but our quirk is 16 months. And so it says if we want to raise $1 million, and look at that like promissory notes, okay? Add up your promissory notes. Then I can't, if I get $1 million in that 16 months, I can't get another lender until 17.
But are you talking about like, so say I'm able to knock out a $200,000 rehab, and I'm at once a month, so 200,000 January, 200,000 February. Are you saying by the end of the year I'm at what is that, $240,000 or 200? That's $2.4 million. I'm over that $1 million limit.
Yeah, you got some options though. What about 2 entities?
Oh, okay. So
You got options. Don't get crazy. Don't do a
find
bunch.
a lawyer.
Yeah, find a lawyer.
But like Ryan Harper, if I'm wheeling and dealing, I can, if I'm hearing correctly, I can only raise like, basically I can only do 5 projects a year using private money.
Using that way, yeah, for 12
using
months.
one lender or all the lenders.
You could have a different lender on each deal, okay? But it's your promissory notes. The dollar amount has to, like your 200,000. You need to stop at $1 million in Texas
for a full year.
For a full year.
So, but then that's where you're talking about the entities and whatnot. So, but like, because I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. Most people don't. That's why I'm here. I did something other people haven't done in this business, is I took the time to pay an attorney to research every state in Canada. And so I can go out and I can speak throughout the nation and teach about what the rules are within their state.
Because I know, like, if to raise money to like form a hedge fund, I know the attorney fees alone on that is about $40,000-$50,000 just to set up a hedge fund.
Right.
That has, you're not getting that money back. That's just to put a sign on the door.
Yeah, the nice thing about it is I'm going to give you a handful. There's 7 total. I'm going to give you a handful that are now state specific. Family, Friends, Associates is one of them. But with the 504, you can go to 5 million, and with the PPM, you're unlimited. And I'm going to give you one more that you can get 5 million at, and I'll talk about that right now, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, when my attorney was researching the United States, he came back so excited, because he found out there was one state that would allow you to raise $5 million, only fill out a 2-page form, and only pay $600 if you live in that state. For the rest of us that don't live in that state, you have to add another 100, so it's $700 for us. But you fill out a 2-page form, pay $700, like you're in Texas if you wanted to use this, and you can suck money out of this other state and use it here. You can cross state lines with it.
So all of a sudden your 1 million turns to 6 million.
And you can advertise within that state and then use the money here. And the state is California. I call it my California loophole, because the words are 14, the name is 14 words long, and I didn't want to memorize that and say that every time I get up someplace and talk. So I made up this other name, California loophole. It sounds slimy, but it's not. It was just because it was a loophole that no other state had done.
So I'm assuming a lot of this you cover in the academy, the Propelio
I
Academy.
sure do, yeah.
So, because I know we need to wrap this up. We've already been doing this for about an hour and change.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about subjects like that you're passionate about, I mean, we could sit here for another 3 hours.
Yeah, it's all covered in the academy.
So
I gave them everything I had.
Go to propelio.com/academy. Seek out Alan's private money, private capital, private money class, and soak that up. Learn it, use it, apply it. As far as doing business with you, how can people get a hold of you? What kind of business can they do? I know you hold training events and mentorship.
Yeah.
What all are you doing out there that people can work with you?
Well, the first thing you need to know is I don't loan money, because I get asked every day for that, okay? What I do is I teach people how to be successful, and I'd rather teach a bunch of folks to do that, and it satisfies me in what I want to do in life. I got a home study system called the Millionaire System, and it covers everything about attracting and converting people into private money lenders, how to manage them, which is called the wealth. There's a Millionaire System, and in that there's 3 legs. One leg is how to attract and convert. The second leg is how to manage, and the third leg is what we're just talking about, is the SEC piece of it. My website is privatelendingmadeeasy.com. All 4 words spelled out, privatelendingmadeeasy.com. Also, there's some free stuff out there. I've got 35 e-coaching lessons. So go out and sign up for that, and every 3 weeks or so, I'll send you another lesson over time. There's also some cool downloads that you'd like to get, some training videos out there. So go check out privatelendingmadeeasy.com, and that's the best way to get a hold of us. Okay.
Well, I really appreciate your time here. privatelendingmadeeasy.com.
Right.
Check it out. If you like this show, like this episode, drop a like, drop a comment. If you're listening on the podcast, share it out. I don't know how you likes on how. I don't know the metrics for podcasts. We're not very good at that. We just do it. But go check out Alan's Academy course on Propelio, and then go to Private Money Made Easy.
There's only 4 parts of a real estate deal. You find the property, you fund the property, you fix it, and then you either keep it long term or you flip it. If you can't get by the second item, you're dead in this business. And what I teach is the easiest, best, cheapest, and safest way to go fund your deals. And so go out and check out privatelendingmadeeasy.com.
Excellent. Well, that's the show for the day. I'm Ryan Harper. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. Typically, it's Ryan S. Harper, at Ryan S. Harper, whatever. If you don't like Propelio, come on, hook us up. Give us a like, give us a share, give us a comment, all those things. Thank you again, Alan, for being here. Check out the Academy, propelio.com/academy. Check out Alan's course, and we'll see you in the near future. Thanks, everybody.
To your wealth.